the apparent arrest of Mayo Zambada, a historical cartel figure who in over 50 years has never been arrested. He could have taught Osama bin Laden some lessons about hiding. According to his lawyers, he was ambushed at a meeting in Sinaloa, but there's a clear crack in the system right now going on down there.
Are they trying to look for who was involved in this? Is that what we're saying? Is that they're trying to see who was the corrupt individuals?
Even the federal government in Mexico doesn't still know what's happening. There's apparently a cleansing going on in the region and a war.
Right now, before we started recording, you were talking about some intel that you were getting. Do you feel comfortable talking about that right now? What's going on?
Oh, yeah.
Because I know for those who are listening, you can explain why the chaos is kind of happening now, but that's
sure. That's
from the recent apprehension of a high-level cartel official, correct?
Yeah. So I have both. I still have contacts and friends of mine still work down there, specifically in Culiacan, in Sinaloa, which is a very rowdy place right now. We just went through the arrest, the apparent arrest of Mayo Zambada, a historical cartel figure who in over 50 years has never been arrested, never been detained. We had very few pictures of this guy. This guy was a ghost. He could have taught Osama bin Laden some lessons about hiding. He landed on a small airfield in New Mexico near the Texas border. Supposedly, he was, according to his lawyers, he was ambushed at a meeting in Sinaloa, zip-tied and betrayed by Joaquin Guzman, who is one of El Chapo's sons, and handed over to the U.S. Authorities. They put him on a plane and basically flew him over the border. The veracity of that story is kind of suspect. There's a few theories out there that we can talk about later. But his arrest has led to a pretty violent upscale situation in Sinaloa. This past weekend, they saw the murder of about 15 people that we know of. I just got some pictures of one of them. There's apparently a cleansing going on in the region and a war, an internal war of the Sinaloa cartel. If people want to view the Sinaloa cartel, it's not a single cohesive entity. It's small factions that are federal, that form a federation of a cartel, basically. With El Mayo gone, a lot of the influences, a lot of the know-how, and a lot of the power that he had went with him. So now you're seeing a cleanse, probably perpetrated by some of El Chapo Guzman's sons. But there's a clear crack in the system right now going on down there. Everybody is in hiding in one way or another, and violence is roaring now. It was pretty quiet after the arrest, but now you're starting to see some of the stories of what actually happened during the supposed abduction of El Mayo Zambada, and obviously who's responsible for some of this apparent betrayal.
Yeah, I was curious about it. I thought there would be a lot more, I guess, news about this immediately. I thought it was going to be immediate kickbacks of deaths and internal fighting. And then currently on the news, we don't really hear that this is happening. You're probably going to be one of the first ones to hear before most of us do. But you start to kind of catch a buzz that things are happening. Now, when you say that there's a cleansing, are they trying to look for who was involved in this? Is that what we're saying? Is that they're trying to see who was the corrupt individuals?
I think if you see what happened and the lack of action after this apparent arrest, abduction, the confusion. People don't really know, not even at high levels within in some of these organizations, that they know what was happening. Even the federal government in Mexico doesn't still know what's happening. And they're actually they're the most nervous of all of them, I guess, because to operate in Mexico for 50 years, putting drugs into the United States, you have to probably have some friends in high-level government, and I'm sure he has those names in his head, and now he's currently in federal custody. So I imagine some of the some of the federal forces in Mexico are kind of nervous. There was confusion and paralysis after this news dropped, which is telling, which means that this was probably orchestrated and planned at a high level. On one side, you have the Mexican government now trying to come up with treason charges for Joaquin Guzman Loera, who, according to the official narrative, was the one that ambushed El Mayo Zambada, put him on a plane, zip-tied him in, and flew him over the border. Imagine that. Mexico is processing treason charges to this man. That should be very telling.
Yeah, that's insane. What I don't think the audience might not pick that up is that one cartel boss is more important than the other one, is what the government is saying. And they're actually calling treason on one for being in the assistance of apprehending this one. That means that individual has so much power tied into the federal government itself that they're so nervous about it. They're trying to make actions to kind of almost save face.
That's kind of the deal there. And again, one of the biggest cartels in Mexico is the federal government. That's a clear thing. And if anybody had any doubts about it, and when I say federal government, there's going to be a few listeners. And again, this is all my opinion. There's going to be a few listeners out there who are from Mexico or probably have some sort of relationship to Mexico that are in love with the current administration currently down there. You can change whoever's in the presidency. It doesn't matter. The line of corruption and power in Mexico has been clearly defined for the past 40 years now. And it doesn't respect and it doesn't give a shit who's in power as far as the presidency. We just went through an election cycle that murdered many of these candidates, which is a clear indication that all of them were sponsored by one side or the other as far as cartels down there. We're seeing a very nervous federal government. We're seeing a weakened Sinaloa cartel, which in some ways is good news. But in others, it's kind of like there's always power vacuums that happen. And being somebody that has experienced what it's like to take out one organized crime element that is in control of a whole region, like I've had that experience. Putting everything in place for them to be taken out. It's almost overnight that any underlings that had phone call connections or that kept a BlackBerry or that had a Leisure is now the new guy. And it's almost sudden and immediate that new heads get placed in power and things start growing again.
And did that give the potential for other cartels like CJ&G or whatever to gain more power? Right. It's almost like a great opportunity for them.